Man. I'm gonna have to do something about my glares. Have to do something about my glares. See that? I see that. All right. I like the lighting. I don't necessarily like the glares. So I'm gonna have to do something about that on this here. Still a work in progress. I'm trying to find something that doesn't reflect my light. I need the light so that I don't look like I'm shining like them little kids whose mama used to put a half a jar of Vaseline on their face and they came outside looking like it was giving the signal from the middle of Gilligan's Isle. Good evening to you. Good evening to you. Come on in. Sit down, take a seat. All you got to do, repeat after me, A, B, C. It's the easiest one. Yeah, folks, I'm tripping tonight, man. I'm straight tripping. Um, I'm tripping because every week it looks like I'm saying, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. And in essence, I told folks, so my Creole predictions are coming to fruition. And as they come true, I'm not necessarily happy about being right. I know you don't believe that. Right. You don't believe that I don't like being right. Well, there's some things when I make predictions, it's about informing people. It's not necessarily about, you know, trying to be right or proving that I know something. Folks say, well, you think you know everything. No, sometimes it's I guess it's just obvious it's been revealed to me or whatever. But whatever the case may be, I'm in a giddy mood because a lot of the predictions, my Creole predictions that I've made for the last year, today being November 4th. So this is the anniversary of Biden being declared the winner. Go figure. And where are we now? A lot of shit we were dealing with last year, we're still dealing with. And I made those predictions. So tonight we're going to talk about it. We're going to get into it. I'm going to expose it for what it is as I see it. And we're going to go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Because it's Thursday, and for whatever reason, Thursday and Friday around this time, we're expecting bad weather. So I'm going to go ahead and get the shows up and running. And those folks that come in on Facebook, I guess if you're on Facebook, you need to follow me so that you get notifications that I'm going live and whatever. So let's go ahead and get started. Good evening. Welcome to the show. I want to thank you for spending your Thursday nights with me. As always, I'm truly humbled that all the things you could be doing, you choose to spend your Thursday nights here with me. My name is Hank Batiste. My show is called OMITdaLOGIC. I got something to say, and this shit makes no sense. I'm your host tonight, and the voices in my head are frustrated, they're ashamed, and they're overwhelmed. First of all, let me just go ahead and put this out here. Let me just say, I take no pleasure in being right about these things. I take no pleasure in seeing my Creole predictions that I made last November 4th into January the 6th and January the 20th. I take no pleasure in seeing those predictions come to fruition. 1 year later, we should be celebrating Joe Biden recapturing the soul of America and how we've progressed in the last 12 months. Instead, what we saw was about 90 days, 90 to 100 days of ascension. And then we hit this Joe Manchin blip. And shit just start going downhill from there. I'm frustrated because only a handful of us actually get it. I'm ashamed because Black folks only rise up and unify after someone is murdered and their face is on a t-shirt. I'm ashamed because Black folks only want to participate in a political process every 4 years do a presidential election, and I'm frustrated here, folks. So bear with me. I'm overwhelmed because it just seems like we collectively can get no sustained satisfaction. Meanwhile, white supremacists and domestic terrorists are allowed to infiltrate the government and boldly running a coup right in front of our eyes under the guise of democracy. But this democracy is not what's promised in the Constitution. It's not for the people, of the people, and by the people. It's a democracy for a few, a chosen few that's motivated by white fright. So yes, folks, I'm overwhelmed. Tonight we're going to talk about some of my Creole predictions that I made the week following Biden's sweeping win, and the Democrats taking control of the House, and in January, eventually the Senate as well. So they took control of Congress and the White House. The one thing they could not touch was the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court had been stacked in the last 2.5 administrations. To those of you who remember, there was an opening during the end of Obama's administration. And because the Republicans were in control, or excuse me, the Trump Republicans were in control of the Senate, they refused to bring a confirmation for Supreme Court justice to the floor. So it left an opening for the incoming so-called delusional Donnie, the despicable orange one. So he got to put somebody on the court who would have given the court some, instead of giving the court balance, it tilted it supposedly towards, I can't call it conservative, I call it exclusionary, because the policies are not as intended by the so-called founding fathers. So tonight we're going to talk about some of those predictions. And I apologize for going off on a tangent, but this thing is just kind of eating at me. I predicted that Biden's administration was a ticking time bomb. I said it had, with the nefarious factions being the progressives on one hand, the moderates on the other hand, and an ineffective leader by the name of Pelosi in the House, and an ineffective leader in the Senate by the name of Schumer. So I said that we needed new blood, but they thought it would, because they were friends of Biden, that this would be a cakewalk for them. What I saw was a ticking time bomb, and then those folks had their finger on the trigger of the detonator. The one thing I did not predict was the Senate becoming, instead of that 50-51 man advantage, what we wound up with was 50 on the Trump Republican side, 48 on the Democratic side, and these two wild cards, not jokers, because you know what a joker is going to do. You got a little joker and a big joker. And there's no way that a big joker, excuse my expression, can be trumped unless by a wild card. So we got these two deuces wild in the Senate that snuck in when my prediction head was turned. But the one thing I knew is we had all of these neophytes come into Congress calling themselves progressives who would take some of what Bernie Sanders was saying and stir the pot. Well, we say that's the political process. But we don't have that kind of time when you're a representative with a 2-year term. So I also said that if they didn't do some things, we were going to start losing these blue and purple states. And Biden would wind up being a lame duck president by the end of the midterms. So 1 year later, instead of being in a more progressive place, we're in this political quagmire. 1 year from now, we're going to be in the midst of the midterms. And if what happened this week is any indication of what's to come, if the Democrats don't get their collective heads out of their collective asses, what can I say? They'll be telling us. So tonight we're going to talk about that ticking time bomb. Tonight we're going to talk about how I said there was 8 to 10 months where Biden had a chance to do something, or we were going to be right where we are now. And like I said, I take no pleasure in being right about these predictions. So tonight's show is called Dems, We Did Our Part. Meanwhile, you're blowing it. I'm Hank Batiste. Let's omit the logic. I got something to say. This shit makes no sense. Let's do it. This shit makes no sense. I don't know if somebody's stubborn or out of touch. I don't know if he's sitting in a chair in the Oval Office. I said he's still behaving like he's a congressman. And he doesn't understand the huge responsibility of being presidential each and every day and being the face of the Democratic Party. He doesn't understand when his underlings, his subordinates, misbehave as a direct reflection on him. I think he was looking beyond the 4 years and started campaigning for a second term. How about let's make this one last and cross that bridge when we come to it? Shortly after the election, somewhere around November the 4th, November the 6th, I made the prediction that Biden had 10 months. I made the prediction that with the sweeping number of, I hate to say this, it sounds sexist, but I'm going to call it what it is, women coming to Congress, those neophytes, that we were going to have some problems. Why? Because we had so many different people from so many different cultures trying to do things for their specific cultures and their specific constituents. I have nothing against no one, but the needs of the many still has to outweigh the needs of the few. That's what democracy is all about. I predicted that there was going to be a showdown between the so-called progressives and the moderates. I predicted that Nancy Pelosi did not have the leadership skills necessary to manage these warring factions in the House. I predicted that Chuck Schumer, did not have the leadership skills, and I'm pissed, folks. I predicted that Chuck Schumer did not have the leadership skills necessary to manage that narrow majority in the U.S. Senate. And I said Senate on purpose because they're not acting like a Senate. These so-called centrists have become constructionists. And we know why. When the people that you are so-called representing saying that your behaviors is not representative or representation of their expectations of why they put you in office, you are out of touch. So whether they're being stubborn or whether they're just looking out for their own best interests, they're blowing it. I was dead on in both predictions. And here's the problem. The Dems are creatures of habit. They've been legislating and leading by capitulating and taking a knee. They call it finding common ground. But if you're the one who's always giving in, that's capitulation. That's bowing down and taking a knee, especially when you know the people that you, and I hate to call them opponents. So let's just say the people on the other side of the aisle have one singular agenda in mind. And it's about following someone who would rather burn down this country if he cannot be in charge. Dems have always wanted to paint themselves as the progressive party, yet historically, the Dems are always the one to give in. They're always the ones to make that backroom deal. Like Nancy keeps standing up and giving deadlines and saying we're so close and the language is there. We just have to dot some I's and cross some T's. Ain't that many I's in the dictionary. Ain't that many T's in War and Peace. There's not that much T in China and Britain combined. Every time the Dems take a knee, it's at America's expense. More importantly, and specifically, is that let me take a breath. More importantly, is at the cost of progress for the Black folks, those folks whose ancestors built this country. I'm not talking about those folks that come here and jump into the political process and call themselves Black when it's advantageous. Yeah, I said it. I said what I said and I meant it. So they're blowing it. When we look at Manchin and Sinema, we see failures as Dems because you were elected because there was a man by the name of Joe Biden who had a plan, a vision for what he called the soul of America. And it was that plan, that vision that got you elected. And so many of them. But once they crossed the seal of the US Capitol, they became individuals with their own private agendas. And all they thought about and all that they are thinking about is getting themselves reelected. So, Dems, let me tell you something. When you send me an email and you tell me that this person or that person is in trouble and whatever I can give will be greatly appreciated, let me say this to you. You get near another penny from me until you understand that the reason that I put you there was not to beg for more money and further your own political agendas and careers. I put you there to move us forward as a country, and specifically as a people who have been disenfranchised and underrepresented, underrepresented since Reconstruction. So you get near a penny from me. The Dems have to make some tough choices if they want to hold on to the House and the Senate. They have to make the strong choices of censoring. They need to censor Manchin and Kristen Sinema. And they should say, since you're not behaving like Democrats, since you have a problem in taxing the richest 400 people, folks, 400 billionaires are going to be affected by a tax hike. And they have a problem with that. So we had this plan to pay for a Build Back Better project, a plan, infrastructure, seniors to make sure that they had health care and dental care and eye care, and little kids to make sure that they were ready to go to school so that they would be starting on a level playing field from kindergarten to first grade. And the plan was this. Joe Biden said that he was going to tax the richest 1% and made sure that they paid a fair share of taxes. And Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin has a problem with that. So who are you representing? Are you representing the multitude that put you there? Or are you representing this 400 billionaires who are so fucking, excuse my French, filthy rich that they build rockets to go to the moon that messes up the Earth's atmosphere and increases our carbon footprint and global warming? So let's call this for what it is. So while you're taking your little joy rides around the stratosphere into outer space and looking at this great little blue and green marble we call Earth, you're doing so at our expense. You're doing so at the expense of our infrastructure. So meanwhile, when we drive across a bridge, we're wondering whether or not that bridge is going to collapse. Meanwhile, in places that never had hurricanes before, they're seeing devastating 4s, 3s, etc. In places that never had tornadoes before. Let me back off of that. The bottom line is this. If Manchin and Sinema don't start acting like Democrats, they should not be treated by Democrats by the Democratic Party. They should get no money for re-election, and they should be censored. They should find another party affiliation. If you're acting like Republicans, goddamn it, go join the Republican Party. Become an independent. That's all I got to say about that. Let me take a breath, folks. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The problem is this. The 2020 census proves something that a study done by Jimmy Carter back in the 70s. In the late 70s, Jimmy Carter did a study, unbeknownst to most. And the study said that America was getting darker. With the number of people coming into this country, America would be darker, and eventually the white majority would be a white minority. So the 2020 proved what they found out in 1976 and 1977. It proved that the study that Jimmy Carter did was true. But let's be real about it. They've always been the minority. They started off with Indians in Massachusetts and then pushed them to the Midwest, and then they tried to push them off the coast of California. See, right now is where I'm supposed to be giving you a historical perspective about how history repeats in itself, and a man that doesn't know history is doomed to relive. No. Bump all of that. I'm at my wit's end. I'm overwhelmed. I'm frustrated. I'm overwhelmed and frustrated because when I talk to a lot of my Black brothers and sisters, it's the man, but we can't be bothered with that every day. And I say, okay, but guess who is? The little Trump disciples. They lost the election. And they're still riding around with these faded ass flags on their pickup trucks and their motorcycles and their scooters. See, they don't get tired. So while you're taking a breath and taking time off and you're saying, we put Biden in office, we got 4 more years, you can't chill because look what's happening. I told you, as soon as Biden was elected, within 10 days, there was restrictive voter laws in 43 states. Now, let me remind you what else I told you. There are 50 states. We're not even counting the territories like the West Indies, St. Martin, St. John. We're not even counting like Puerto Rico. There are 50 states. Of those 50 states, 27 of those states have Republican governors, up until yesterday, mind you. 23 of those states had Democratic governors. So they were supposed to be blue states. And like Georgia, even where they had Republican governors, the states were more purple than they were red. So please explain to me how out of 50 states, 43 states have some type of voter restrictive laws that were drafted almost immediately. It was because of the 2020 census, folks. It said that America is getting darker. And when you say things like that, you spike what's called white fright. So even those people that call themselves progressives, the one thing they all have in common is they're progressive as long as they're there and you're here. But when the gap starts to narrow, all bets are off. Not all, but certainly enough for 43 out of 50 states. Let's move on. Since the beginning, white supremacy equals no justice for us. We've got an attorney general by the name of Merrick Garland, who's basically, I don't know what he's doing. When the House of Representatives issued subpoenas to 4 of Despicable Donnie's top loyalists, and the House of Representatives found Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress, and sent the case to the Attorney General to have him prosecuted criminally, Garland sat on his hands. So if your Attorney General doesn't have any teeth, his ass definitely can't eat corn on the cob. And this punk is trying to take a bite out of an apple. So Steve Bannon, I said this last week, but I want to remind you. He broadcasted on January the 5th that validating the delegates on January the 6th wasn't going to go the way it usually goes. His exact words was, tune in, strap in, because it's going to be hell. So now we're just buying time. Last week, what I told you is it sounds like they're doing something. Every week we get these news flashes, and then we find out that these stories have no teeth. These people are walking away, but if I run a damn red light and I have 2 outstanding tickets, my behind is going to be thrown in jail, and I'll have to put up a $3,000 bond. Why? Because they'll, as soon as they put your name in, they can see, quote unquote, your net worth. And that's what determines your bail. So me and Matt Gaetz, a U.S. congressman. Let's say for the sake, now you know me, I got women on top of women on top of women on top of women. But let's say for the sake of argument, and I'm not bragging, so don't get me wrong, but let's say for the sake of argument, I was out in a red light district buying some sexual favors tonight. And Matt Gaetz has already been identified as moving girls, sexual trafficking. Who do you think is going to be treated the worst? Me trying to spend time with a 20 or 40 or whatever they cost? Or him who's moved 20 or 40 girls, who's sold 20 or 40 girls, who's taken videos of him doing obscene things with these 20 or 40 girls, who's younger than your daughters and your granddaughters. So this is what white supremacy equals: no justice for us. Kyle Rittenhouse, the little young boy who somehow bought a AR-15, went to Black Lives Matter protests and killed 3 people. And the judge, like in 1957, this is regression. This is what happens when we don't stay engaged and energized in the political process. This is what happens when we only get involved with the process every 4 years when there's a presidential election. See, we don't get a chance to vote for those people that are running and being elected and appointed for judgeships. The judge will not allow the people that were murdered by Rittenhouse to be referred to as victims. So you get murdered, what are you, if not a victim? In the case of Ahmaud Arbery, the prosecutor is up in arms because there is a white majority in the jury, not representative of, I can't make this up, folks. This shit makes no sense. See, and let me explain something to you. Gabby Petito was a little white girl, blonde hair, blue eyes. If they don't give a about her, what makes you think they're going to look out for what's best for Ahmaud and say her name? What's Brianna's name? Yeah, I just told you. When the last time you heard something about that? And there's this whole list, this whole collage of Black Lives Matter. I could plaster this wall and you won't see anything. When there was no outrage, when it was obvious that this boy did something to her. And then there's all of these stories that the prosecutor offered the parents total immunity for telling them where Brian was. Now we're coming to find out that they have been in touch with this boy. And like I told you before, the smartest thing that he did, and I'm sure he was told to do this by his attorney, I can't prove it, but the perfect strategy is to buy a phone with Gabby's card and then accidentally on purpose leave it home. Meanwhile, you've got another phone that you bought down the street that you can be in contact with. And we heard about how the FBI put up cameras around the house, and at some point they thought the mama was the son. And my point is this. We had two things that put Biden in office last year. Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter. Did I say Black Lives Matter? But as soon as he got there, all that sweeping police reform, it became secondary. And now all of these other things we were going to do with the infrastructure and we were going to do with, senior care and child care and building roads and bridges and creating clean energy. So what we have is Trumpism, Trump publicans, when Kevin McCarthy is handpicking people who will not question. You see, they're opportunists. They see that the biggest problem with the Democrats is the Democrats are not of one accord. And that's what's best for America. So the Trump Republicans have one agenda. What's best for Trump and his disciples, white right. As long as you can keep white folks afraid, you can get them to do whatever you want them to do. Here's where I was supposed to give you another historical reference on corrupt politicians and politics, but I won't, not tonight. Tonight, I'm going to point out the obvious. We've got a Supreme Court that's supremely supporting one agenda. We've got circuit and district courts who are hiding behind a mask of conservatism. Well, conservatively speaking, I would like to feel safe when I walk out the door. I would like to feel that policing in the Ninth Ward could be just as good as policing in Lakeview. And if you don't live in New Orleans, let me put it this way. I would like to feel, if I'm in DC, that Southeast DC could be as safe as Georgetown. In Baltimore, I would like to believe that East and West Baltimore can be safe without putting in Harlem, in Brooklyn, in Chicago. The only time we can make these streets safe is once we see a bike path and we start to see the signs of gentrification. Then policing starts to work. Why? I'm pissed off. I'm on one tonight. And I'm about to wrap this up because I can't take much of it. When we look at the kind of people that are being elected, right now it's a known fact that 4 of the people that were elected this week were attendees at the failed coup attempt on January the 6th. Let me stand up so you can see my shirt. January the 6th, coup d'etat. Lest we forget. It was not an insurrection. They could call it what they want. But those terrorists who were there that day are being elected to state and federal offices under the guise of democracy. So yes, I'm pissed off and I'm frustrated. I can't think straight. I can't talk straight. And you should be upset as well. This is something that we have to do collectively. So the turn of 2022, I'm going to start telling you how I think. Because the only thing these people will respond to is monetary value. Monetary value buys votes. That's why Sinema is not doing what she's supposed to be doing. Because Big Pharma, the drug companies, is paying for a re-election. And that's why Joe is not doing what he's supposed to be doing. Because he has interest in coal mines, in the coal industry. So the clean air bill is going to hit him in his pockets. So we have people who want to be in power so badly that they are convincing people, their disciples, and I use that term on purpose. We've got all of these Jim Jones and Jim Jones Juniors and Jim Jones III and Jemena Jones and Jametta Joneses who are telling their constituents, drink the Kool-Aid. It's going to take you to a better place because the America that we know that's getting darker isn't made for you anyway. Pelosi, unlike Pelosi, McCarthy is not going to buy it down. He's not going to listen to the neophytes. He's going to tell them, get your shit together or you can no longer be a part of the Republican Party. Oh, that's what they just told Adam. Basically, that's what they told Liz Cheney, who suddenly had a epiphany and found her conscience. The Dems have to play hardball. If you want to hold on to the slim majority, if you want to increase this majority, and understand, by pushing this lie that voting is fixed, anytime they lose an election, that election will be contested from this day forward. So I'm pissed-rated. I'm pissed-rated. That's pissed off and frustrated. I'm pissed-rated. Yeah, I made up a word. That's where we are, folks. Unlike Pelosi, McCarthy is choosing neophytes who will bow down, buy in, and capitulate to Trump and his McCarthyism agenda. McConnell is going to show him how to get it done. So why can't Schumer do what McConnell does? Why can't Pelosi do what McCarthy does? Why can't Biden, and I never thought I'd say this, if you repeat, and this part of, I might just edit this part out of it, but I gotta say this. I never saw Trump as being presidential, but I need Biden to be a little bit more and stop trying to be everybody's buddy and get along with folks. You have to understand, some of these folks that are smiling in your face when they're sitting in a meeting with you, they're laughing. And they're not laughing with you. That's all I got for you tonight, folks. I got to get out of here. I need me a drink. Go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, give me a thumbs up, hit the bell notification. If you've already subscribed, share my podcast with someone. The only way we can fight this is we demand that things be done for us collectively, not just Black folks. Because the thing is, what happens to Black folks eventually happens to all folks, except the richest 1%. So right now, the bill that they're working on, and I got to say this and get the hell out of here, the bill that they're working on still has a tax break in it. So instead of being taxed, these rich mofos are going to be given a break. I can't make this up. Do it for yourself. Because when I post stories, 3 people look at it. So I'm going to tell you about it. And if you really want to know about it, check it out for yourself. If you've already subscribed, share my podcast with someone, ask others to subscribe. I'm not going to go TikTok and be dancing and no. Give me a thumbs up. Give me some positive words. Tell me what's happening positively. Tell me what you got out of this. And in the meantime, in between time, I'll see you next week. Right here, same Baptiste time, same Baptiste place. My name is Hank Batiste, alias the Renaissance Man, aka Rennie. This is OMITdaLOGIC. This shit makes no sense. I got something to say. This shit makes no sense. And as always important, I wish you love. I wish you peace. Hair grease. I'm out of here, folks. I need a drink. Who's buying? Oh, I got a bottle in there.